Have you ever lay awake at 3 o'clock in the morning, staring blankly at the ceiling while your mind runs a marathon you never signed up for? Your eyes are burning from the harsh blue light of your phone, your body is completely exhausted, and yet there is an intense, buzzing energy in your chest that refuses to let you rest. You scroll past one more video, check the time again, and feel that familiar sinking sensation as you realize you have to wake up in less than 4 hours. You tell yourself the same lie you always do, promising that tomorrow you will sleep early, but deep down, you know that tomorrow never comes. Instead, you will wake up with a thick, heavy brain fog, drag yourself through the day on pure adrenaline, and repeat the entire exhausting cycle all over again. It feels like a curse, forcing you to overanalyze every conversation, worry about every possible future, and replay every past mistake. But what if this mental chaos isn't actually a broken part of who you are?
What if your chronic overthinking is actually a highly sophisticated, deeply ingrained survival strategy that your brain created to protect you? To understand why your mind refuses to quiet down, we have to look at someone who seemed to have figured it all out, a man named Leo. On the outside, Leo was the absolute picture of discipline and success.
If you saw him at his local gym, you would see a man who arrived at the exact same time every single day, with his headphones firmly over his ears, his hood pulled low, and his eyes locked straight ahead. He never chatted with anyone and never looked around the room for approval. Most people in the gym wrote him off as cold, arrogant, or antisocial. But that was a lazy assumption, because the truth of Leo's quiet intensity ran much deeper than that. Leo wasn't avoiding people because he thought he was better than them, he was protecting something. He had learned very early in life that depending on other people created an unacceptable level of risk. Whether it was an unreliable parent or teammates who gave up, Leo discovered early that the only consistent variable in his life was himself. That lesson followed him into adulthood. For Leo, a missed deadline or a cancelled plan was a painful confirmation of a rule written in stone years ago. Do not build your stability around other people, because eventually they will let you down.
So, Leo cut out the variables. He adopted what psychologists call a high internal locus of control, a powerful belief that every outcome in his life was determined entirely by his own actions, rather than by luck, fate, or the people around him. In his mind, if he worked hard and anticipated every failure, he could control his destiny.
This extreme self-reliance made him an exceptional worker, but it also built a silent, invisible cage around him. When you believe you are solely responsible for everything that happens, your mind can never afford to rest. This is the psychological engine that drives the chronic overthinker. For Leo, every single day was a high-stakes performance. He was running a constant, relentless internal review on himself, measuring his words, evaluating his choices, and dissecting his flaws. When he had to work in groups or interact in social settings, his brain didn't see an opportunity for connection, it saw a threat. His hypervigilance made him feel like he was constantly on stage, being watched and judged by an invisible audience. Exercising with a partner became an exhausting negotiation of pace and judgment, spiking his cortisol levels. To protect his peace, he retreated further into solo routines, convinced that absolute independence was his greatest strength. But you cannot run a high-intensity engine forever, and for Leo, the cracks was starting to show.
They were invisible to his colleagues because he was so good at holding it all together, but at night, the system began to collapse. He would lie in bed at 11, telling himself it was time to sleep, but his brain remained locked in high-alert beta waves. His mind was racing with to-do lists, unfinished arguments, and anxieties about the coming week.
Because he was exhausted, he would drink coffee late in the afternoon, unaware that caffeine stays in the system for 6 to 8 hours. Even if he slept, that caffeine blocked adenosine, cutting his vital deep sleep short by up to 30%. He was sleeping, but he wasn't recovering, waking up with a heavy brain fog and burning eyes. He was trapped in high-functioning burnout, using willpower to mask his exhaustion, believing sleep was a waste of time rather than a performance tool. Then came the night when the engine seized. At 3 a.m, Leo stared at his phone, his heart pounding with anxiety. The pressure for tomorrow's work presentation was immense, but his brain was empty yet too loud to let him sleep. He felt a profound sense of helplessness. The absolute self-reliance that had protected him for so long had now isolated him in a prison of his own mind, and he had no idea how to escape. The next morning, Leo didn't wake up fresh. He woke up defeated. He realized that his strategy of trying to control every single variable through sheer mental force was failing him.
He couldn't keep thinking his way out of overthinking. He needed to find a way to shift his brain out of threat detection mode, to shut down the constant internal performance review, and to actually let his nervous system rest. But how do you quiet a mind that has been screaming for survival since childhood?
The answer came from an unexpected place. During one of his lonely, early morning gym sessions, Leo noticed an old boxer in the corner of the room. The man was skipping rope, but he wasn't just working out. His movement was incredibly fluid, almost hypnotic. He was completely relaxed, his hands held low at his waist, his feet barely clearing the floor with a springy lightness that made him look like he was floating, 10 to 12. There was a profound stillness in the boxer's eyes. He wasn't looking around, he wasn't checking his phone, and he didn't seem to have a single worry in the world. He was entirely, completely present in the rhythm of the rope. Leo was fascinated. He had always viewed exercise as a battle against the weights, a way to force his body into submission through raw discipline. But this looked different. This looked like peace. He decided to buy a simple, inexpensive plastic jump rope, known as a licorice rope. The first few minutes were a disaster. The rope caught on his feet, slapped his shins, and tangled around his arms. His ankles burned, and his mind spun with frustration, telling him he looked ridiculous and should just go back to his comfortable weights.
But Leo forced himself to take a deep breath and try again. He shortened the rope to match his height, keeping it just long enough to clear his feet, and focused entirely on the sound of the rope hitting the floor. And then, something extraordinary happened. As he began to find a steady, simple 2-foot jump, the chaotic chatter in his mind suddenly went silent.
He couldn't think about his presentation, he couldn't worry about his finances, and he couldn't run an internal review on his life. The moment he tried to think about anything else, the rope would strike his feet, instantly bringing his attention back to the present moment. The precise coordination of swinging the rope and timing his jump repeatedly demanded his brain's full processing power. Hands, arms, feet, and breath had to coordinate perfectly. For the first time in years, Leo's mind was forced to exist in the exact millisecond of the jump, locking out the worries and endless analytical loops. He was finally present. Finishing his 10-minute session, he felt a deep, calm lightness in his chest. The constant anxiety had vanished. He had found a back door to quiet his mind, not by thinking, but by moving. For Leo, that single 10-minute session with the jump rope was a revelation. It wasn't just a physical workout, it was a sanctuary of absolute silence in a mind that had been screaming for decades.
The rhythmic click of the vinyl cord became a metronome, grounding him so completely that his anxious mental loops had no room to exist. But as he stood there, catching his breath while the quiet settled deep into his chest, he knew that a single 10-minute escape wouldn't solve a lifetime of chronic hypervigilance.
The pattern of overthinking was too deeply grooved. a survival strategy his brain had spent years building to protect him from unpredictability. To truly reclaim his life, he had to turn this raw physical breakthrough into a systemic, daily blueprint for mental and physical recovery. He started with the physical practice itself. Every morning, Leo returned to the corner of the gym, focusing on the playful mastery of the rope rather than the grim battle with heavy iron weights. At first, his calves ached, requiring progressive adaptation to build strength. But he stayed consistent, keeping his arms close to his ribs and hands relaxed at waist level, focusing on making his movements as small and efficient as possible. Over time, he moved away from the basic 2-foot jump and began practicing the boxer skip, a fluid, hypnotic footwork pattern where he shifted weight from one foot to the other. His jumps became so low that he barely cleared the thin cord, his feet light and springy. The physical changes in his body were remarkable.
His cardiovascular endurance skyrocketed, and he felt an explosive lightness in his stride. The continuous up and down movement of the jumping served as a powerful booster for his immune system, stimulating his lymphatic flow and opening the valves to clear out toxins. Yet, the true transformation occurred behind his eyes. In the past, his solo training sessions had been a shield to block out other people, maintaining absolute control over his environment to avoid the stressful evaluation of an audience.
But now, as he skipped rope, there was no ego involved. He wasn't lifting weights to prove his strength or performing for others. The rope was perfectly, brutally honest. If his focus drifted for even a split second to a stressful work email, the rope would instantly strike his shins, delivering a gentle, tactile reminder to return to the present moment. He was learning to tolerate mistakes without running a harsh internal performance review on himself. He was teaching his nervous system that it was safe to let go of the need for control. But Leo soon realized that quiet mornings in the gym were only half the battle. The true test of his overthinking mind always came in the dark, silent hours of the night. If he could not master his sleep, he would remain trapped in high-functioning burnout, relying on pure willpower and caffeine to mask a deeply exhausted brain. He began to study the science of rest, discovering that real recovery is not a matter of how many hours you spend lying in bed, but how efficiently your brain moves through its natural 90-minute sleep cycles.
During these 90-minute windows, the brain transitions from light sleep into deep physical sleep, where muscles repair and the immune system recharges, and then into REM sleep, where the brain processes emotions, sharpens focus, and consolidates memory. When these sleep cycles are clean and uninterrupted, a person can sleep for just 6 hours and wake up feeling entirely recharged.
But Leo's sleep was highly fragmented, poisoned by late afternoon caffeine and the constant blue light of his screens. He designed a pre-sleep shutdown sequence, a ritual called the 3-2-1 power down. He realized that his habit of working late into the night kept his brain locked in high-frequency beta waves, the state of active, analytical thinking. To shift his mind into the calm alpha and theta waves required for deep sleep, he had to give his nervous system time to transition. Using the 3-2-1 method, Leo stopped eating heavy meals 3 hours before bed. 2 hours before sleep, he shut down his laptop and stopped all work-related tasks, refusing to engage with stressful thoughts or future planning. In the final hour before bed, he turned off all electronic devices, replacing the harsh blue light of screens with dim, warm lamps. During this final hour, Leo practiced a mental declutter. He sat at his desk with a blank notebook and dumped his thoughts onto paper, writing down every lingering worry, tomorrow's to-do list, and every unresolved question spinning in his head.
By physically transferring these thoughts out of his mind and onto the page, his brain finally received the signal that it was safe to shut down. He filled the rest of the hour with light stretching and a calm playlist, signaling to his autonomic nervous system that the threat level was 0 and it was safe to rest.
To protect this fragile cycle, Leo implemented a strict caffeine curfew. He had always relied on coffee to push through afternoon fatigue, but he learned that caffeine stays circulating in his system for 6 to 8 hours. Even if he fell asleep, the chemical blocked adenosine, the natural sleep-inducing compound in the brain, reducing his vital deep sleep by up to 30%. He made a firm rule: no caffeine after 2 in the afternoon. He also transformed his bedroom into an optimal sleep sanctuary, lowering the thermostat to 18 degrees Celsius and using a sleep mask to block out any stray light. Finally, he aligned his sleep schedule with the 90-minute rule. Instead of setting his alarm for random times, he planned his rest in clean, 90-minute blocks. He decided to sleep for exactly 6 hours, representing for complete sleep cycles, going to bed at 11:30 in the evening and setting his alarm for 5:30 in the morning. He kept this schedule completely consistent, waking up at the exact same time even on weekends, to strengthen his circadian rhythm and train his body to release sleep-inducing melatonin automatically.
The morning routine was just as deliberate. When his alarm rang at 5:30, Leo resisted the powerful urge to hit the snooze button. He knew that falling back asleep for a few minutes would only plunge him into a new sleep cycle, causing him to wake up groggy and disoriented.
Instead, he forced himself into immediate action. Within the first 10 minutes of waking, he stepped outside onto his balcony, letting the natural morning sunlight hit his eyes. This simple exposure to bright, outdoor light served as an instant reset for his master circadian clock, suppressing any remaining melatonin and triggering a natural surge of cortisol and serotonin, the hormones responsible for alertness and mood. He then walked into the bathroom and splashed his face with ice-cold water, occasionally doing 20 quick push-ups to raise his heart rate. This burst of physical movement and cold stimulation instantly flooded his system with dopamine and noradrenaline, clearing away any lingering sleep inertia within minutes. Within a few weeks, the results of this combined physical and mental protocol were nothing short of miraculous. For the first time in his adult life, Leo began waking up before his alarm, his eyes open, his heart calm, and his mind completely clear. The heavy, suffocating brain fog that had defined his mornings for years was entirely gone, replaced by a clean, sustainable energy that lasted throughout the entire day.
He no longer needed to drink massive amounts of coffee to survive, nor did he feel the desperate need to retreat into isolation to preserve his energy. He realized that sleep was not a weakness, but his most powerful performance tool. As Leo's physical vitality returned, the defensive armor he had worn since childhood began to soften.
The high internal locus of control that had once kept him trapped in a cage of constant hypervigilance was transforming. He began to understand that while he was entirely responsible for his own actions, he did not have to control every external variable to be safe. He could trust his ability to handle whatever happened, without needing to anticipate and overanalyze every possible failure in advance. One morning, as he finished his jump rope session, his chest light and his mind still, he caught the eye of a young guy who had been watching him skip. Usually, Leo would have pulled his hood lower, put his headphones back on, and stared straight ahead to protect his solitary space. But this time, he paused. He took off his headphones, hung them around his neck, and smiled. When the young guy asked him how he managed to make skipping look so effortless, Leo walked over, handed the guy his spare licorice rope, and showed him how to measure it to his height, keeping it close to his body.
In that simple, quiet moment of connection, Leo realized that the strength he had built alone didn't have to be used as a shield to keep the world out. It could be used as a bridge to let people in. He had spent his entire life overthinking, trying to calculate a way to protect himself from the pain of being let down, only to realize that the ultimate safety didn't come from absolute control.
It came from being present, from trusting himself, and from realizing that his mind was no longer a prison, but a place of peace. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to Mind in Minutes for more psychology stories like this. Thank you for watching.